This is a story about the absolute limits of human endurance and what happens when something fundamental snaps inside the human psyche. This is the story of Aileen Wournos. To the public, she was a monster, a cold-blooded serial killer who hunted the dark corridors of Florida's highways. But to criminologists, she represents something far more complex, a terrifying masterclass in how a human being is systematically broken down until nothing is left but raw, unadulterated rage. Long before the headlines, before the terror, her past was entirely defined by devastation, instability, and deep-seated abuse. Born in 1956, it seemed as though fate had rigged the game against her from the very start. At just 4 years old, her mother packed up and abandoned her. Her father was completely out of the picture, locked away in a prison cell for the horrific rape of a 7-year-old child. Orphaned by circumstance, Aileen and her brother were handed over to their maternal grandparents. But refuge was nowhere to be found. When her grandmother passed away, the fragile remaining pieces of her childhood shattered entirely. Her grandfather leveled a brutal, unthinkable psychological weapon against the young girl. He blamed Aileen for her grandmother's death. Day after day, she was drilled with a singular, devastating message that she was utterly worthless. These were not just cruel words. They were the architects of a profound psychological trauma that would later cause her entire life to spiral, completely out of control. At 20 years old, desperate to outrun her ghosts, Aileen hitchhiked down to Florida. It was here she met Louis Gratz-Fell, a wealthy 69-year-old man. In what looked like a desperate bid for security, she married him. But stability was a language Aileen didn't know how to speak. The marriage dissolved into a volatile nightmare of domestic violence, with Aileen acting as the aggressor. Within just 9 weeks, Fell filed a restraining order, and the marriage was over. Plunged back into destitution, Aileen crossed a dangerous line, graduating from a chaotic life into premeditated armed robbery. Her first heist netted just $35 and 2 packs of cigarettes. The price? A 1-year sentence inside a prison cell. By 1986, Aileen found a rare anchor of affection when she entered a passionate relationship with a woman named Tyria Moore. But love couldn't pay the bills. To survive and support them both, Aileen operated on the extreme fringes of society as an independent sex worker along the interstates. It was a perilous, degrading world where she was constantly exposed to predation. And in 1989, that volatile mix exploded into bloodshed. Her first victim was 51-year-old Richard Mallory. Mallory picked Aileen up while she was hitchhiking. She led him deep into a secluded area, pulled out a firearm, and shot him multiple times. This specific pattern, multiple excessive gunshots, became the chilling signature across her subsequent victims. When psychologists later analyzed the crime scenes, they noticed a striking dynamic. Throughout her entire life, Aileen had been the victim, the one who was systematically abused, degraded, and stripped of power. But in these wooded clearings along the interstate, the roles reversed completely. She was finally the one holding the absolute power over life and death. Across all 7 of her known killings, the forensic evidence painted a terrifying picture of overkill. In behavioral profiling, overkill points directly to a crime of intense, deep-seated passion, profound resentment, or a bottomless well of rage. Every single pull of the trigger wasn't just directed at the man in front of her. It was a retroactive strike against every man who had ever tormented her during her horrific childhood. As her killing spree accelerated, her psychology detached completely. Her victims ceased to be human beings in her eyes. They became cold, transactional sources of financial survival, targets to be eliminated so she could strip them of their belongings, to fund her life with Tyria. But no matter how calculated her rage felt, the chaotic nature of her life caught up with her. The ultimate breakthrough for investigators happened on July 4th, 1990, following a violent car crash. The abandoned wrecked vehicle belonged to one of her victims, Peter Sums, who had already been reported missing. A local witness, Rhonda Bailey, saw the accident unfold and watched two women walk away from the wreckage. When police processed the vehicle, the dragnet began to close around Aileen. Under the mounting pressure of a statewide investigation, her relationship with Tyria began to fracture beneath the strain. Sensing impending doom, Tyria fled Aileen's movements through local pawn shops, where she had traded her victims' stolen goods. In January 1991, at a biker bar called The Last Resort, the ride came to an end. Aileen was arrested. Believing that the two women operated as a team, police viewed Tyria as their prime leverage. They offered Tyria full immunity on one simple, devastating condition. She had to betray Aileen and extract a full confession over a wiretapped phone line. Even in the end, Aileen's fiercest instinct was protection. Realizing that the woman she loved was in the crosshairs, she consciously chose to take the fall alone. On that tapped line, knowing her words were sealing her fate, she confessed. Her exact words were, "I'm not going to let you go to jail, Ty. I love you. If I have to confess everything just to keep you from getting in trouble, I will." On October 9th, 2002, after spending over a decade on death row, Aileen Wournos was executed via lethal injection. Yet, her final descent into eternity was marked by the same profound delusion and psychological alienation that defined her life. Standing before the witnesses, her final statement to the world was a bizarre, cinematic transmission. "I just like to say I'm sailing with the rock, and I'll be back like Independence Day with Jesus, June 6th. Just like the movie Big Mothership and all, I'll be back." Ultimately, Aileen's life acts as a dark window into human fragility. Her childhood lays bare the terrifying mechanics of rage, paranoia, and why she ultimately viewed the entire world through a lens of extreme hostility. Her background does not excuse the horrific choices she made, nor does it minimize the lives she stole. But it forces us to confront a deeply unsettling truth: that monsters are rarely born. More often than we care to admit, they're carefully built